11 of the most ridiculous wrestling disguises. Number 11, Mickie James, SmackDown 2016. When news broke that the legendary Mickie James had re-signed with WWE in 2016, fans speculated just how and when James would make a triumphant return. A few weeks after the news broke relating to James re-signing with WWE, a mysterious masked woman named La Luchadora appeared at the side of Alexa Bliss on SmackDown. It was obvious that this individual was James, as the mannerisms were the exact same, and even the most casual of fans knew that this was in fact the former women's champion. La Luchadora would unmask following a cage match between Bliss and Becky Lynch in January 2017, and the reaction wasn't exactly groundbreaking, mainly because everyone was fully aware of who the masked individual was. WWE could have waited a few more weeks to debut James, and some fans even question if the disguise had any purpose, as it may have been easier from a creative standpoint just to have James return without any disguise or ambiguity, as everyone knew she was coming back. Number 10. Solo Sikoa, WrestleMania 39. It became a running joke amongst fans that whenever a Bloodline member would interfere in a match, they would always wear a black hoodie. This black hoodie appeared to have special powers, as every time a member of the faction wore the garment, it was almost as if they were completely invisible. At WrestleMania 39, the finish of the Roman Reigns vs Cody Rhodes match came when Solo Sikoa interfered, and in typical Sikoa fashion, he would once again sport the infamous black hoodie. This made little sense, as everyone knew it was Sikoa in the hoodie, and if he was going to interfere, it's unclear why he needed to be presented in a disguise. Number 9. Ted DiBiase, SmackDown 2011. In 2011, WWE attempted to recapture some of the magic of the Legacy faction by delivering a feud between Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase. The issue with the feud was that Rhodes had ascended to become one of the most interesting characters in WWE, whilst DiBiase had struggled to gain momentum since the Legacy faction disbanded. On an episode of SmackDown, DiBiase would attempt to ambush his arch-rival by wearing a paper bag on his head, whilst Rhodes was delivering some tremendous heel work to the live crowd. It's unclear why DiBiase needed a disguise, as he could have just attacked Rhodes without the fanfare. Nevertheless, the reveal did receive somewhat of a pop from the crowd, and it was arguably the standout moment of the feud that failed to deliver the goods. Number 8. Eric Bischoff's SmackDown 2002. Now, it took around 90 seconds for WWE fans to realize that the minister officiating Billy and Chuck's wedding was in fact Eric Bischoff. Whilst the makeup looked incredible, Bischoff couldn't keep the bizarre accent going, so at random times he would use his standard speaking voice, which was hilarious to witness. The big reveal here was surprisingly creative, as Bischoff would then introduce 3-minute warning to wreck the wedding, and it managed to build towards a SmackDown vs Raw rivalry. According to Bischoff on his podcast, the process to make the disguise took around 2 months.
This was something that had been planned out well in advance. And they flew me out to get fitted for this mask that you saw me in. And that took almost an entire day. I remember sitting there for the better part of the day. And I walked into the studio where they make all this stuff, and it was like walking through, a museum of all of the coolest, stuff from movies that we all recall. Whether it was Terminator, whatever your favorite movie was, where, you had actors wearing prosthetics. It was just amazing, the stuff that I saw there.
A credit should be offered to the WWE for at least trying with the disguise, as a 2-month period to create a one-off disguise is an impressive commitment. Number 7. Mankind on Raw 1997. The 1997 feud between Mankind and Triple H was vastly underrated. Whilst most fans celebrate their feud from 2000, this feud managed to show the world that both men were destined for the main event scene. Whilst most of the segments between the two had a serious tone, one segment on Raw was rather comedic. Mankind would pose as a cameraman to ambush Triple H, yet the peculiar thing was that Mankind was wearing his mask. This meant that nobody noticed a masked individual was suddenly on the camera crew. It was a little far-fetched, and it would have been greatly improved if Mankind was directed to simply take the mask off. Number 6. Sting, TNA Impact 2010. TNA at one time were prone to delivering moments that turned into memes, and the segment between Sting and Rob Van Dam in 2010 was no exception. As RVD was interacting with the crowd, a man in a Sting mask hit RVD with a chair. The man then removed the mask, and it was actually Sting himself. This meant that to disguise himself, Sting had purchased a mask of his own face. This was hilarious, and the crowd barely reacted, as everyone knew it was clearly Sting in the crowd. Even the TNA commentary team failed to take the moment seriously, as Mike Tenay would declare it's the icon Sting wearing a Sting mask. Number 5. Big Boss Man, Raw 1998. That was a smart idea for WWE to bring Big Boss Man back in 98. Boss Man was a credible name, and with a few minor tweaks, the gimmick could easily fit in with the Attitude Era roster. In a weird move, Bossman made his return to WWE as Vince McMahon's security guard, but his identity would be kept as somewhat of a secret. The character would wear a balaclava, but it didn't hide enough of his face, so everyone knew who it was. It also didn't help that Bossman didn't change his mannerisms in the slightest, so he was instantly recognizable in the role. Number 4. Eric Young, NXT TV 2016. If a disguise has a fans chanting the wrestler's identity, then it's usually a sign that that disguise has completely failed. On NXT TV in 2016, WWE debuted the Sanity faction, and thanks to internet rumors, as well as the fact that it was clearly Eric Young behind the faction, the crowd began to chant before Young removed his face covering. Whilst this is not the worst disguise in the world, WWE could have done a better job in protecting the big reveal. Number 3. Becky Lynch, SmackDown 2018. Wrestlers decided to disguise themselves as fans is rather common, and in 2018 on an episode of SmackDown, Becky Lynch believed that all she had to do was wear a wig and glasses to avoid detection. This disguise looked completely ridiculous, and her arch-rival Charlotte Flair was seemingly the only one in the arena who didn't know that it was Lynch. Number 2. Dean Ambrose, SmackDown 2016. The feud between Dean Ambrose and Chris Jericho in 2016 had some fun moments, and the feud acted as Ambrose's final feud before his WWE title reign. A lot of the comedic moments of the feud worked extremely well, as despite some of them being childish in nature, Jericho and Ambrose always had great comedic timing, so they made it work. One segment on SmackDown on their road to their Ambrose Asylum match saw Ambrose pose as a cameraman, and to make the disguise work, Ambrose decided to wear a Wyatt family-style beard and beanie hat. Whilst his disguise was blatantly obvious, WWE managed to hide it well thanks to stellar camera work. Now before we get into number 1, we want an honorable mention of Hulk Hogan and SmackDown in 2003. As after WrestleMania 19, WWE decided to take the Hulk Hogan character in an unexpected direction. Due to Hogan defeating Vince McMahon at the aforementioned show, McMahon made Hogan sit out the rest of his contract and wouldn't allow him to wrestle on WWE programming. This resulted in Hogan debuting a new gimmick, Mr. America. Mr. America was Hogan in a mask, but continued to use Hogan's signature theme song, along with his moveset and famous taunts. This gimmick was confusing, as it was unclear what the point was, as everyone knew it was Hogan, yet the audience were just supposed to play dumb. Michael Cole and Taz often referred and joked on commentary regarding the fact that it was clearly Hogan in a mask, which made the creative direction even weirder. And the gimmick could have worked, that's if WWE attempted to disguise Hogan a little better, and Hogan changed his mannerisms and moveset. The arrival of Mr. America came at a time in which WWE were losing major top names, so it made little sense for WWE to pretend like Hogan wasn't on the active roster. It would have made more sense for Hogan to embark on one final run, but WWE were clearly of the belief that the Hogan persona had run its course. And number 1, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Heat 1998. During the Attitude Era, Stone Cold Steve Austin had a habit of dressing in disguises to ambush the villainous Mr. McMahon. One of the more infamous segments between the two took place on Heat before the 1998 Breakdown pay-per-view. McMahon would be cutting a promo inside a steel cage when he began to interact with a cameraman. However, this cameraman was clearly Austin in disguise, and the fans in attendance obviously knew it. The only person who didn't realize who the cameraman was McMahon himself. The cameraman then revealed himself to be Austin, and Austin began an assault on McMahon. The segment was hilarious, and McMahon sold Austin somewhat heroic antics to perfection. But there you have it folks, 11 of the most ridiculous wrestling disguises. Be sure to leave your comments down below. I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.